Hello guys and welcome to another Tokyo Revengers video. And in this video I will be talking about the original timeline from Tokyo Revengers. But before I start this video guys, let me tell you guys that this video is going to contain manga spoilers from Tokyo Revengers. The original timeline is the very first timeline in the world of Tokyo Revengers, and it spans from chapter 269 to chapter 274. Shinichiro is the main character of this flashback, and this is the only time that we get to closely follow the perspective of Shinichiro Sano. So the original timeline is kicked off at chapter number 268, and this is when Mikey reveals to Takemichi that his brother, Shinichiro Sano, is actually a time leaper. And Mikey also revealed that Shinichiro turned back time in order to save him. And then the original timeline starts off with Shinichiro happily riding his motorcycle with all of the members of the first generation Black Dragons gang. Shinichiro is riding with Mikey, and he is proudly leading his gang to the disbandment ceremony of the Black Dragons gang. This also shows us how close Shinichiro is to his younger brother, and just how much Mikey looks up to Shinichiro. Wakasa, Benkei, and Takomi are also riding alongside Shinichiro, and they are having fun while they are laughing with Shinichiro. Shinichiro even says that he is basically like Mikey's father, and he will teach him a lot about biker gangs while he is still a child. Mikey looks up to Shinichiro, so he wants to ride the motorcycle just like his older brother, but Shinichiro says that it is too soon for that. Mikey proclaims to Shinichiro that he will definitely surpass him in the future, and we can really see that Shinichiro is the person who inspired Mikey to become a gang leader. And once the disbandment ceremony begins, we get to see that Shinichiro is standing at the top of the stage while he is addressing his gang. As the president of the Black Dragons, Shinichiro makes the announcement that he will be disbanding the first generation of the Black Dragons gang. And after making the announcement, Shinichiro says that he will leave the next generation of this gang to his juniors. Shinichiro goes on to say that he doesn't like sad stuff, so he will just say one last thing. And in this moment Shinichiro declares that he is proud to spend his teenage years riding with all of his gang members. And this is a very emotional moment for Shinichiro, and it marks the ending of his gang life. All the members celebrate the disbandment of their gang after becoming the #1 gang in Japan, and all of the executives are seen crying alongside Shinichiro. Sometime later, we see Shinichiro visiting the gravesite of his father, and he makes a promise to his father that he will raise Mikey to become an amazing person. Shinichiro also tells his father not to worry, because he will raise both Emma and Mikey in the place of his deceased father. Shinichiro stopped at the store in order to get gifts for his younger siblings, and we see that Shinichiro decided to get a toy airplane for Mikey. And Mikey is very excited after seeing that the toy airplane is the Concorde airplane. And we can also see that Emma really liked her present, which is a teddy bear stuffed animal, and both of them are very happy after receiving their presents. 1 month later, Shinichiro was seen working at the bike shop, and Shinichiro was informed that he suddenly got a call from his grandfather. In this phone call he learns that Mikey is hospitalized after sustaining a very severe injury to his head, and Shinichiro quickly rushes to the hospital. When he arrives at the hospital, Shinichiro finds an unconscious Mikey laying in the hospital bed, and Mikey is hooked up to a ventilator. Senju, Sanzu, and Baji are all seen crying next to Mikey, and we see that they are all heartbroken after seeing what happened to Mikey. Shinichiro asks Sanzu what happened to Mikey, and Sanzu explains that Mikey badly injured his head, and he fell down the stairs while he was playing with his new toy airplane. And Baji explains that Mikey has stopped moving, and he is basically in a coma. Shinichiro learns from the doctor that Mikey is in a vegetative state, and there is no possibility of him getting better. And after receiving this horrible news, Shinichiro is seen angrily smashing the toy airplane. And while he is smashing the toy airplane, we can see that Shinichiro is breaking down into tears while blaming the airplane for his misfortune. The next time we see Shinichiro is 4 years later, and he has been diligently taking care of Mikey for all of this time. Shinichiro is pushing his younger brother in a wheelchair, and since Mikey is a middle schooler, it has been 4 years since the accident. In the next chapter of the original timeline we see that Shinichiro is riding in the car with Keisuke Baji, and they are going to pick up Sanzu from a juvenile detention center. Baji questions why they would pick him up after he stabbed someone, and Shinichiro says that it is because the victim was talking badly about Mikey. Shinichiro asks Baji why he is not attending school right now, but Baji thinks that it is fine because being at school is very boring. Sanzu is seen leaving the juvenile detention center after serving his sentence, and he thanks the staff for looking after him. Shinichiro is waiting outside for Sanzu, and he greets Sanzu by waving at him. When Sanzu turns around, he sees that Shinichiro and Baji have both come to pick him up. And Shinichiro told Sanzu that the reason why he came here to pick him up instead of his older brother, Takomi, is because Takomi said that he is done with Sanzu. Sanzu is curious about how Mikey is doing, and Shinichiro asks if he wants to go see Mikey. Shinichiro goes to get Mikey, and he says that it has been a year since Mikey has seen Sanzu. In this part of the chapter we see that Sanzu tries to go see Mikey, however after seeing Mikey's condition, Sanzu started breaking down into tears. And seeing Mikey in this horrible state was a very big shock for Sanzu. While he is walking with Baji, Sanzu talks about how Mikey's condition has gotten a lot worse, and he says that at this point, that person is not even Mikey anymore. And Baji says that he is very worried about Shinichiro, because not only did his grandfather die, but his younger sister Emma also ran away from home. And because he is working at the hospital while studying to get his nursing license, Shinichiro barely even has any time to sleep. We can see that Baji has a very worried expression on his face, and Baji says that Mikey is probably not going to last much longer. And in this scene the narrator tells us that 1 month later, Mikey has passed away on the date of July 20th. In this panel we can see that Mikey has died, and his dead body is laying in a casket of flowers. After that point, we get to see the reaction of Shinichiro, and he is so angry that he is punching holes into a wall. Shinichiro is foaming at the mouth, and he is breaking down into despair. We don't get any words from Shinichiro in this moment, but from the raw emotion on his face, we can clearly see the unbearable pain that was caused by the death of Mikey. And after that point, the next time we see Shinichiro is when he meets with Wakasa, and we get to see him talking to Wakasa. Shinichiro talks about how he got taken advantage of by many different scams, and he tried everything in order to find a way to save Mikey. Shinichiro is telling Wakasa about how they all lied to him, and he contemplates whether or not he should kill them all for deceiving him. Wakasa admits that he is actually a bit relieved that Mikey has died, and this is because he was worried that Shinichiro would be the one to die before Mikey. In the original world line we can see that Wakasa has an assortment of different tattoos on his arms and chest, and he is also seen smoking a cigarette. We then see that Wakasa gives Shinichiro an invitation to join his gang, and Wakasa says that if they had Shinichiro on their side, then their gang could easily be at the top of the world. And Wakasa also tries to tell Shinichiro that he shouldn't just rot away in despair because of the death of Mikey. Wakasa then brings Shinichiro to his bar so that they can drink together as a goodbye to Mikey, and we also learn that Wakasa is the owner of this bar. Wakasa orders the host to bring him some women, but since a large group has already arrived, the host said that there are no women available. Shinichiro was listening to the group who were drunkenly talking about a man who claimed to be a time leaper, and they went on to say that this old man said that he can't perform the time leap without a trigger. And we see that the group is laughing at the homeless man, and they are saying that if he was really a time leaper, then he wouldn't be living out on the streets. After listening to their conversation about the time leaper, Shinichiro decided to approach the group, and he asked them to tell him everything about what they were talking about. Wakasa asks Shinichiro if he is crazy, and he tries to tell Shinichiro that the drunk people are obviously just joking about the time leaper. However, after going outside in the back alleyway, we see that Shinichiro fought against the group of delinquents, and he defeated every single one of the delinquents all by himself. And after beating up the group of drunken delinquents, we can see that Shinichiro is asking them to show him the location of the time leaper. Shinichiro has gone completely berserk after the death of Mikey, and he is clinging on to the faint hope that he can save Mikey by finding the time leaper. And Shinichiro is so desperate to save Mikey that he is willing to try any method that he can find. The next chapter of the original timeline begins with Shinichiro meeting up with the time leaper for the very first time. And in this moment we see that Shinichiro approaches the homeless man, and Shinichiro is asking him if he is the time leaper. And we also see that Shinichiro is asking the homeless man to tell him how he can time leap back to the past. And after hearing Shinichiro's question, we see that the homeless man just reacted to this question by madly cackling at Shinichiro. The time leaper is an older homeless man with a long beard and crooked teeth, and in his introduction he is seen laughing like a crazy person. Wakasa is still with Shinichiro, and he asks Shinichiro why he is acting so crazy, and why he would believe a crazy story told by a drunk person. Wakasa also asks Shinichiro if he is even listening to him, and then Wakasa tries to grab him by the arm. However, Shinichiro just replies to Wakasa by coldly telling him to shut up. After seeing Shinichiro's erratic behavior, Wakasa decides to leave Shinichiro, because he doesn't want to do this with Shinichiro. The homeless man tells Shinichiro that the time-leaping power is not easy to obtain, and he won't give it to just anyone. However, Shinichiro tries to explain that he wants to use the power to save his brother. The homeless man responds by saying that it is possible for him to give the power to Shinichiro if he chooses to do so. However, he says that Shinichiro is very stupid if he thinks that he will give him the power for that purpose. After that point, the homeless man tried to walk away from Shinichiro, and we can see that Shinichiro is visibly angry by the homeless man's response. And in this scene, the homeless man reveals to Shinichiro that he wanted this power so badly that he killed the previous owner in order to obtain it. After hearing this information, we can see that Shinichiro decided to pick up a metal pipe in order to attack the homeless man, and Shinichiro is menacingly approaching the homeless man from behind. After picking up the metal pipe, Shinichiro angrily started to charge at the homeless man, and in this moment Shinichiro is attacking the homeless man with the intent to kill. At this point Shinichiro's rage has reached a boiling point, and we can see that he is ruthlessly hitting the time leaper in the head with a metal pipe. Shinichiro is madly panting after attacking the homeless man, and his victim's injured body is bleeding out on the pavement. The homeless man is laying in a pool of his own blood, and we see that he is just laughing at Shinichiro. In his final moments, the homeless man said that Shinichiro is just like him, and this is because he decided to kill the previous owner of the power in order to obtain it. And before his death, the time leaper tells Shinichiro that he will be cursed. But Shinichiro is just telling him to shut up, while savagely beating him in the head with a metal pipe. After killing the homeless man, Shinichiro realizes that this must mean that he can go back to the past in order to save Mikey. Shinichiro tried to go back to the past, however he became very distressed when he realized that his time-leaping power was not activating. And with the blood of the homeless man on his hands, Shinichiro realizes that he just killed someone over a lie. And Shinichiro is coming to grips with the fact that he even went so far as to murder a homeless man for the faint chance that he could save Mikey. The next day we see that Sanzu is meeting up with Baji on a rainy day, and Sanzu is telling Baji that he is going to stop by the house of Shinichiro, and this is because he is worried about Shinichiro. While he is on the way to Shinichiro's house, Sanzu suddenly encountered Shinichiro, and he noticed that Shinichiro is standing on top of a bridge. When Sanzu runs up to get a closer look, he sees that Shinichiro is putting himself in danger by standing on top of the railing, and Sanzu immediately tries to call out to Shinichiro. After seeing Shinichiro in a suicidal state, Sanzu tried to talk to Shinichiro, and he asked him what he is doing, and why is he standing on top of the railing. Shinichiro is extremely heartbroken, and Shinichiro just responds to Sanzu by sadly noticing that this person is Sanzu Haruchiyo. Shinichiro is just gazing at the storm waters that are raging below his feet, and he is telling Sanzu that these floodwaters will definitely kill him. Sanzu tried to talk Shinichiro out of killing himself, however Shinichiro would not listen to Sanzu. Shinichiro just responded to this by telling Sanzu that today is the day that marks the anniversary of Mikey's accident, and more than anything, Shinichiro wants to go back to that day. And in this tragic moment, we can see that Shinichiro is crying while in the pouring rain, and we can also see that he desperately wishes to go back to the past. Sanzu was horrified when he realized that Shinichiro decided to commit suicide by jumping off of the bridge, and Sanzu was reaching out to Shinichiro while screaming for him not to jump off of the bridge. In this suicide attempt, Shinichiro is truly at his lowest point, and we get a panel of Shinichiro accepting his death by falling into the raging waters. And from the look on his face, we can really see that Shinichiro just wants the pain to end. While he was sinking down into the depths of the water, Shinichiro was thinking to himself that this means that he can finally be at peace. And Shinichiro just wants everything to end as he is drowning into the water. However, while he was on the verge of drowning, we saw that Shinichiro realized that something strange was happening, and in this moment the time-leaping power suddenly got activated. The time-leaping power saved Shinichiro from dying, and it sent him back to the past. Shinichiro couldn't believe his eyes when he saw that Mikey was alive, and he notices that Mikey is happily playing with the toy airplane. Mikey is running towards Shinichiro while playing with the toy airplane, and this is the same exact toy airplane that caused Mikey's accident. After traveling back to the past, Shinichiro fixed his eyes on Mikey again for the very first time since his death, and Mikey is telling Shinichiro to get out of the way. Mikey's flying kick hit Shinichiro directly in the face, and the force of the kick sent him on his back. Shinichiro is so disoriented that he is wondering if this is a dream, and he is trying to find out if he really time leaped back to the past. Traveling back in time after being on the verge of death was a very big shock to Shinichiro, and he is confused about why he is still alive. However, after seeing Takemichi and a calendar, Shinichiro realized that today is the same exact day, however it is 4 years in the past. And today is the date of July 30th, and the year is 1999. Mikey was very confused by Shinichiro's strange behavior, and this is because Mikey thinks that Shinichiro usually would have easily dodged a kick like that. Shinichiro became extremely emotional after realizing that he traveled back to a timeline where Mikey is still alive, and Shinichiro couldn't stop himself from breaking down into tears after seeing Mikey again for the very first time. And Shinichiro is embracing Mikey while he is breaking down into tears. And from the look on his face, we can clearly see that Shinichiro is overcome with joy after reuniting with his beloved younger brother. Shinichiro exclaims that this isn't a dream, and then he asks Mikey if he wants to try to ride a motorcycle for the very first time. Shinichiro is happily thinking to himself that this isn't a dream, and he actually went 4 years into the past, and this is on the same exact day that he killed himself. Shinichiro is amazed by the fact that he really time leaped back into the past, and he is determined to use this opportunity to redo his life. Shinichiro is very glad that he has a second chance at life, and Shinichiro thinks that if this isn't a dream, then this time he will definitely protect Mikey. And Mikey is having the time of his life while riding the motorcycle for the very first time, and this is something he never got the chance to do in the original timeline. Shinichiro thinks that he will never forget the time that he got the call informing him of Mikey's accident, and he realizes that the clock is showing that exact time. Shinichiro asks to check if Mikey is doing alright, and Mikey happily replies by saying that he is getting used to riding the motorcycle. Mikey tells his older brother that he really loves riding on the motorcycle, and Shinichiro is just joyfully thinking to himself that since Mikey is doing fine, then that must mean that he changed fate. After arriving back at the house, Shinichiro immediately runs inside to see if his family is alive, and Shinichiro is really hoping that Emma and his grandfather will be alive. And Shinichiro started crying tears of joy after seeing that both Emma and his grandfather are still alive in this timeline. Shinichiro's family is confused as to why he is acting so emotional, and Shinichiro says that he wants to try helping his family with the cooking. However, since he doesn't know how to handle a knife, Shinichiro decided to help out with cleaning instead, and we can see that he is very happy about being in a timeline where his family is alive. Shinichiro was under the impression that everything would be perfect in this new timeline. However, while he was cleaning, we saw that something strange started happening. Despite his family being alive, Shinichiro's dreadful sin of murdering the homeless man came back to follow him in the form of a curse, and this curse manifested as the dark impulses. And on this day, we see that the dark impulses took over Mikey's body, and in this moment the curse is forcing Mikey to attack Sanzu. Mikey has no control over his body at this moment, and this is how Sanzu got the brutal scars on his face. This was the very first time that the curse had taken control over Mikey's body, and in this scene we can see that the curse is telling Sanzu to smile after cutting him in the face. However, during this time, Shinichiro had no idea that the curse was responsible for this violent incident, and so this is the reason why Shinichiro was asking Mikey why he attacked Sanzu. However, Mikey explains to Shinichiro that he had no control over his body during that moment, and Mikey said that when he regained consciousness, he had no idea what was happening until he saw the scars on Sanzu's face. Mikey tried to apologize to Shinichiro, however Shinichiro just replied to this by telling Mikey that Sanzu was really the person who he should be apologizing to. Shinichiro takes Mikey to go visit Sanzu at the hospital, and after arriving at the hospital, we see that Mikey apologizes to Sanzu for doing something so horrible to him. Mikey says that the scars on his face will probably be there for the rest of his life, and Mikey feels very horrible for giving Sanzu the scars on his face. Shinichiro then goes to talk with Sanzu, and Shinichiro says that he will not ask him to forgive Mikey, however he asks Sanzu whether or not he will decide to still remain friends with Mikey. However, even after this brutal incident, Sanzu's loyalty to Mikey was still unshaken, and with a smile on his face, Sanzu responds to this question by saying that Mikey will be his friend for the rest of his life. And in this moment we can see that Shinichiro is shaking hands with Sanzu, and he is saying thank you to Sanzu. However, while he was shaking hands with Sanzu, we saw that Shinichiro's time leaping power suddenly got activated, and in this moment Shinichiro time leaped back to the future. And when Shinichiro processed what was happening, he found himself sitting in front of a motorcycle. And when he looked around the room, Shinichiro realized that he is surrounded by motorcycles, and after taking in his surroundings, this is when he noticed that he is standing in a bike shop. After checking his phone, Shinichiro saw that the year is 2003, and this is when Shinichiro realized that he time leaped back to the future. Shinichiro immediately started wondering if this means that Mikey is alright, and while this was happening, we saw that Mikey started calling out to Shinichiro. Mikey arrived to the bike shop while riding on his motorcycle, and Mikey is asking his older brother if he can fix his motorcycle because it is broken. Shinichiro was worried about Mikey, however when he realized that Mikey was alive, we can see that Shinichiro had tears in his eyes. And it was in this moment that Shinichiro realized that he accomplished his mission of saving Mikey, and we saw that Shinichiro asked Mikey how old he is. And Shinichiro couldn't stop himself from breaking down into tears after seeing that Mikey has gotten so much bigger. And Shinichiro became so emotional that he fell down to his knees, and we could see that Mikey was visibly confused as to why Shinichiro was acting so emotional. And in this emotional moment, we can see that Shinichiro is crying tears of joy, and he is extremely happy that he was able to save Mikey by leaping through time. And after fixing Mikey's bike, Mikey rides away on his motorcycle, and Mikey is happily saying thank you to Shinichiro. And while this was happening, Shinichiro suddenly noticed that he was being approached by Sanzu. Sanzu uses the honorific of older brother for Shinichiro, and this shows us that Sanzu basically sees Shinichiro as an older brother figure. And Sanzu decided that he needed to talk to Shinichiro, and the reason for this is because he feels like he's going crazy. Shinichiro and Sanzu go to talk at a cafe, and Sanzu reveals that he actually has two conflicting sets of memories. And Sanzu says that he still has memories of the timeline where Mikey died, and he still remembers the day that Shinichiro jumped into the river. However, when Sanzu regained consciousness, he suddenly found himself in a different timeline. Sanzu was extremely confused by the memories of the different timelines, and he says that he doesn't understand why he suddenly got sent to a different timeline. And it was in this moment that Shinichiro revealed to Sanzu that he leaped through time in order to change the past, and he did this in order to save Mikey. We could see that Sanzu was visibly shocked after hearing that Shinichiro is a time leaper, and we see that Shinichiro also tells Sanzu about the homeless man that he killed. After their conversation, Shinichiro asks Sanzu to keep everything that he told him a secret, and Sanzu just responds to this by saying that it doesn't matter, because nobody would believe him anyway. And then Sanzu and Shinichiro both waved goodbye to each other. And while he is walking through the streets of Tokyo, Shinichiro thinks to himself that he probably does not need the time-leaping power anymore. And it was in this moment that Shinichiro suddenly heard a commotion happening, and when he turned his head he saw that there is a group of schoolchildren. Shinichiro saw that one of the children was wearing a red cape, and this is the scene where Shinichiro crossed paths with Takemichi for the very first time. And Takemichi proclaims that the hero of justice has arrived. Takemichi is confronting the bullies for picking on a little girl who is all by herself, and we can see that he is trying to protect Hinata. And in this moment Takemichi is saying that he will not allow them to bully Hinata. The bully mocks Takemichi by saying that he is so scared that he is shaking, and Takemichi just responds to this by winding up a punch from his right fist. However, this fight ended with the bullies ganging up on Takemichi, and Takemichi is telling the bullies to fight him one-on-one in a fair fight. Hinata is also crying, and she is telling the bullies to stop kicking Takemichi. And it was at this point that Shinichiro decided to step in to stop the bullies from stomping on Takemichi, and Shinichiro tells the bullies to knock it off. Shinichiro steps up to stop the bullies, and then he scared off the bullies by punching a street light. The bullies couldn't believe their eyes after seeing the power of Shinichiro's punch, and they were so intimidated that they ran away. The bullies are apologizing to Shinichiro while running away, and Shinichiro is checking on Takemichi to see if he is alright. Takemichi is still very frustrated from the incident, and in this moment we see that Takemichi is asking Shinichiro how he can get stronger. Takemichi wants to get stronger so that he has the power to fight back against the bullies, and he tells Shinichiro that he wants to be like him. And with tears running down his face, Takemichi tells Shinichiro that he wants to be a real hero. Shinichiro was caught off guard after hearing the words that were spoken by Takemichi, and this caused his thoughts to immediately start drifting to the homeless man that he killed. And in this scene we can see that Shinichiro is remembering the day that he killed the homeless man, and he is remembering the moment where he obtained the time-leaping power. After hearing that Takemichi wants to be a hero, we see that Shinichiro just smiles at Takemichi, and Shinichiro tells him that it will be okay, and this is because he will definitely become strong. While holding up his hand, Shinichiro thinks about the words of the homeless man, and the homeless man said that he has the ability to give him the time-leaping power. Takemichi was still crying with his head down on the floor, and Shinichiro reached out his hand in order to grab Takemichi by the hand. Shinichiro is shaking hands with Takemichi, and Shinichiro tells Takemichi that if there is someone he wants to protect, then he can use this power if he runs out of options. And in this moment Shinichiro decided to pass on his time-leaping power to Takemichi, and this is how Takemichi obtained the time-leaping power. And when Shinichiro shook hands with Takemichi, it was at this moment that the time-leaping power was transferred to Takemichi. And this part of the story shows us that Takemichi not only inherited Shinichiro's time-leaping power, but he also looked up to Shinichiro when he was a child. However, Takemichi had no idea what was happening at the time, and Shinichiro was saying that he should have gotten the time-leaping power in this way instead. And after entrusting the power to Takemichi, Shinichiro says goodbye to Takemichi. Shinichiro is certain that Takemichi will definitely use the power for good, and we can see that Shinichiro is smiling after seeing that he found a person who was worthy of receiving the time-leaping power. In this scene we also got to see the reaction of Hinata, Kisaki, and Takemichi, and these three characters were all here to witness this crucial moment. And in the present timeline, we also find out that Shinichiro also told Wakasa about the little boy that he gave the time-leaping power. And it was in this moment that we learned that everything was connected on that fateful day, and on this day, we saw that all four of these important characters were all in the same place. And it was on this day that Takemichi's story truly began, and everything began when Shinichiro gave Takemichi the time-leaping power. And this chapter ends with showing us Takemichi, Shinichiro, Kisaki, and Hinata all standing together, and this is showing us that their paths crossed on this fateful day. The date is August 13th, and the year is 2003, and the next time that we see Shinichiro is when he is looking for the homeless man. Since this is a new timeline, Shinichiro thought that the homeless man would still be alive, however when he checked under the bridge, the homeless man was nowhere to be found. And after walking back to the bike shop, Shinichiro noticed that someone smashed a hole in the door. And after going inside of the bike shop, Shinichiro noticed that there was a thief inside of the bike shop. The thief was caught trying to steal the motorcycle that was meant for Mikey's birthday, however when Shinichiro got a closer look, he started to recognize the thief as Keisuke Baji. And while this was happening, Kazutora suddenly ran up behind Shinichiro, and Baji realized that Kazutora is getting ready to attack Shinichiro. Baji tried to frantically yell for Kazutora to stop, however it was already too late, and Kazutora attacked Shinichiro by hitting him in the head with a metal pipe. And while he was laying in a pool of his own blood, Shinichiro suddenly remembered the words of the homeless man, and in this memory the homeless man is putting a curse on Shinichiro. During this scene we can see that Kazutora's body is being completely overtaken by the curse, and Kazutora is saying that he wasn't the one who killed Shinichiro. We see that Kazutora is crying while the curse is taking control over his body, and Kazutora is saying that everything that happened is Mikey's fault. Shinichiro's injured body is bleeding out on the floor, and Shinichiro is thinking that this must be karmic justice. And the reason why he is thinking this is because Kazutora killed Shinichiro in the same exact way that Shinichiro killed the homeless man all those years ago. And Shinichiro's flashback ends with Mikey telling us that Shinichiro died only a few days after he gave the time-leaping power to Takemichi. And this flashback solves the mystery of Mikey's dark impulses, and it is really the curse that was born from Shinichiro killing the time leaper. And in the end, it was this curse that caused the death of Shinichiro, and the curse forced Kazutora to kill Shinichiro. Anyway guys, this is where the flashback of the original timeline ends, and this is the end of this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, and want to see more like it, then like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you for watching.